Today we're joined by Jeff Uhrig, CEO of Novomer. And to get things started, Jeff, why don't you tell us a little bit about Novomer and some of the markets that you serve?
Yeah, first of all, thanks, Paul, for hosting me. I'm really excited to participate, and I think these are important conversations to have across the value chain. Regarding Novomer, the company has really been established over the last almost 15 years now with the sole purpose of finding more efficient catalysts to undertake ring opening type reactions. For Novomer, we've done that very efficiently with two very common gases, gases that you are in contact with nearly every day. The first being carbon dioxide, and the other one being carbon monoxide. These are very useful gases from a chemistry perspective, is in that they contain quite a bit of oxygen, but they're also, of course, greenhouse gases. So the more efficiently you can use these in chemical conversions, I think the happier our planet's going to be. In terms of the markets that we're targeting, I like to frame this question in two different ways. The first market that we're targeting is the global challenge of climate change and waste, and ultimately how that impacts our health. So a lot of people talk about their chemistry serving a particular chemical market, but we like to think much broader than that in terms of chemicals' impact on human health and the environment. I guess more specifically around the markets that we're targeting to assist in that transformation. Today, we're spending a lot of our efforts developing a new class of compostable polymers. These compostable polymers are important for two reasons. The first being that, if you've heard me talk before, is that they're incredibly oxygen dense. So the more oxygen dense the polymer is, the more opportunity you have to incorporate molecules like carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide into your polymer. The second is just the efficiency in which they break down in many different natural environments. These class of polymers, we call them compostable polyesters, but many people are now calling them a different class called PHAs or polyhydroxyalkanoids. These materials, because they're, in general, they're produced in nature, there are many living organisms and enzymes that exist in nature that are able to efficiently break these materials down. So ultimately, our goal is to use our chemical transformation technology to serve a broad market to reduce waste and also improve human health.
Well, those are certainly big challenges. And nowadays, the consumer is very aware, and most of corporate and I think governments are aware of the challenges with plastic waste, with, climate change. And there seem to be more sort of goals out there, net zero 2050. And we're just seeing a lot of focus on this area. And so where do you think, compostability is a really interesting area. Where do you think Novomer will have the greatest impact on some of these very, very large challenges?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, when we think, and one of the reasons I joined Novomer, when we think about sustainability and being able to achieve these really ambitious goals like net zero 2050, you've got to do it through the lens of scale. And I think that's pretty obvious. And I think more and more people are recognizing this. When we look at our markets and what we're able to do, we're competing against companies like Dow, like Exxon, that have nearly unlimited resources and also have very low costs of capital. And what that generally means is that their infrastructure or their basis in producing new materials is quite low. They can also deliver these plants at very large scale. So it's not unusual to see a polyethylene plant being produced somewhere between 1 and 2 million tons a year from a single plant. Put that in contrast to the global market today for bioplastics. You look at just the compostable version, it's only about 1 million tons a year. If you add in certain bioplastics like bio-PE, that number is also about 1 million tons. So in this framework, one single polyethylene plant is the same as the global production for bioplastics. So if we're really going to change the math here, if we're really going to change the equation, unfortunately, we can't be doing this 5,000, 10,000 tons at a time. Uh, that has been, I'd say, the Achilles heel of most bioplastics is when you're relying on a sustainable infrastructure, both on the front end and on the back end. The infrastructure is often not there to deal with larger volumes. So I think where Novomer is unique is that because we're using thermocatalysis, because we're using known methods of conversion, we can scale our process much more efficiently. So when we look at a goal like net zero 2050, we think that this particular solution is well equipped to deal with that at scale.
I mean, you referred to competing or, essentially competitors being very, very large companies, and being a small to mid-size, company, that must seem like a fairly, large mountain to climb. Do you see opportunities for collaboration with some of these larger companies? And are you open to that? And what kind of form do you see that potentially taking?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I personally have a mission within our organization that partnerships are nearly always favorable, and these partnerships do two things for a company like Novomer. First, they should reduce the time to market. When we look for partners, we look at partners that can help us or assist us with reducing that time to market. So perhaps they possess some expertise in technology development or producing catalyst or an application development. All those aspects we believe, should reduce that time to market. The second thing that it does or it should do with any partnership selection is that it should de-risk that equation. As I alluded to earlier, one of the big advantages that the large guys have is that they oftentimes have 20, 30 years of experience operating a facility. So when they go to raise capital, oftentimes, especially in a low interest rate environment, they're looking at 10% type IRR targets. So they can raise capital very efficiently. So by working with large partners, what that does is it reduces Novomer's risk. People aren't looking at us saying, this is a great technology, but how are you going to bring it to market? If you line up those partners, it de-risks your technology and ultimately assists in your valuation and your ability to raise capital.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other aspects of a large company is where they fit in the value chain and their relationships with the next player in the value chain and end use markets. So when you look at potential relationships, what kind of where does the channel to market fit as a opposed to just looking at capacity and capital?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there's a lot of unique challenges from beginning to end. And when you look at Novomer, in terms of what defines Novomer in terms of the product we sell, what is Novomer's product? And I talked a bit in vagaries about our market is human health or plastic waste, but when you cut down to it and you start talking about individual partners and the supply chain, the product that we have is a process technology. That's what we're selling. We're selling a way or a mechanism, if you will, to convert feedstock, which contains carbon, into polymers or sometimes other chemical intermediates that also contain those same carbons. And we think about this value chain partnership model in three areas. So first, the feedstock. So where do we source our feedstock from? How do we partner with folks? How do we more efficiently use that feedstock into markets? We have a very robust strategy around Should we use petrochemical-based feedstock or bio-based feedstock? And we engage in multiple conversations there. Once you get in that core process technology, and I think this is maybe not a unique view, but certainly there's room for debate in this particular area. But even within the core process technology, you have to understand that you can't be an expert in every unit operation. So for us, we start with the reactor, then we go through a distillation sequence, then a polymerization reactor, then polymer drying, and ultimately extrusion. And it's not possible for Novomer to be an expert in all these key fundamental areas. So again, we're looking at partners that can assist us with individual unit operations and de-risking certain aspects of that technology. It also goes into that converting from a process technology into an operating technology. So very simple things that I think are often overlooked by technology startups are things like operations manuals, commissioning, where to put valves for shutdowns, or where to actually employ resources around controls and ensuring that your plant operates safely. So again, these are areas where partners can be really helpful, and we're more than willing to share in some of that value with partners that can help us achieve those goals. And then of course, the last area is, okay, now you have this product, and who are your partners to bring this to market? Novomer, we have two distinct types of products. One is, as I mentioned, a chemical intermediate. So these would be things like acrylic acid, acrylamides. On the one hand, they're well-known markets and they're commodities in a certain sense. But you're using a different process technology. You might have a different impurity profile. We also like to commit to a bio-based feedstock, which is unique, but also presents a pricing challenge. So who are those partners that are willing to pay more for that bio-based feedstock and ultimately bring that product to market? Conversely, if you're looking at a new material or a novel material, like our poly-3-hydroxypropionate, this compostable polymer, in that case, you've got to find or identify partners that are committed to the hard work it takes to get a new polymer spec'd in. Every polymer is different. As much as you want to say it's similar to something else, it's going to have unique challenges, both in processing or molding or film blowing. And then even once it gets into the package itself, how is it going to behave when it's in contact with food, or in contact with air, or on a store shelf, or shelf life? So these are all challenges that, again, we're almost wholly reliant on partners, maybe not for every aspect, but certainly guiding us in the right direction in terms of what things are important to bring these products to market.
There are a lot of there's a lot of talk about compostability and biodeg, and some companies are really committed to recyclable materials. So compostability sometimes is a little bit challenging for people to digest and sort of say, wow, this is the direction we should go. Do you have a particular story or analogy to help frame this, because there is so much dialogue in the market, to help differentiate Novomer and your thinking on this focus area?
Yeah, it's something I certainly alluded to earlier. I think the problem with materials, is that they need enormous scale, and versus a software platform, or frankly even vaccines or a lot of healthcare applications, you don't need. I mean, you certainly need some scale, but the profit margins are strong enough that if you have a unique product that solves a big problem, you can get away with smaller scale. Even in the retail world, consumer products, I think the Amazons have really changed the game in terms of direct to consumer selling, and you can be profitable and unique yet even at small scale. This is a difficult market, because if you're not in scale, you're really not well equipped to compete. And again, it's not just the scale of the compostable polymer manufacturing. We could scale great, but if there's no one on the back end to take the compostable polymer ensure that it's truly composted or broken back down into its key components, then you're missing a lot of the core advantage of the opportunity. If we're just going to take compostable plastics and use them in an ordinary course of business, and then they get designated to landfill because there's no infrastructure, well, essentially we haven't gained anything. So I think this is part of the challenge is you've got to not only develop your technology, but have the infrastructure grow along with it. I think if there is I wouldn't say a perfect analogy, but maybe the closest thing to it, or certainly over the last 20 years, is the move towards electrification of vehicles. So initially, the electric cars or the electric car opportunity was always working in terms of a mathematical perspective. It's going to use less energy. It's going to have a lower carbon footprint. It's going to have more efficiencies, et cetera, et cetera. But then the pragmatist in me said, okay, that's great, but where's the infrastructure? Where are the charging stations? How are you going to be able to deliver power to these vehicles for long road hauls or trucking even? So without that back-end infrastructure, you really just didn't see electric vehicles take off. And now what you're seeing is that entire value chain has been developed all the way from the feedstock of renewable feedstocks. Wind and solar have really taken off. That provides a renewable power source for electric vehicles, and then the infrastructure is developed around it. And that's really what we're going to need for this bio-based or compostable polymers. We're going to have to develop this renewable feedstock infrastructure, of course, the conversion technologies to make the materials, and then on the back end ensure that they're sustainably collected and put in the right spot. Otherwise, we're going to miss a big opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great analogy, and the energy, sorry for the pun, the energy in the electric vehicle market is, palpable. Everybody feels it, and so I think that provides some inspiration for the biopolymers and compostability. So thank you for that. As you look to potential collaborations with large corporates, what do you personally enjoy? What does it mean to your teams, and what do you hope to accomplish?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult question to answer because you come up with this idea of partnering, and that's essentially our business model at Novomer is partnering. That's what we do all day, every day, as we talk to potential partners. But then you quickly uncover that not all partners are created equal. Some are really more in the curiosity stage. They're interested in learning about your technology, keeping a pulse, and I call these folks primarily second movers. I don't want to go first, but in the case that someone else does go first, I want to be a very close second. I want to catch up, and that's difficult to till out because the interest is there, but they're ultimately not going to move the needle. So we need to find or identify folks that want to be first movers, and I think the fun part of that is identifying really what their needs are. Anybody who's been in my position and has gotten a first draft of say a joint development agreement typically rolls their eyes or shrugs and says, "Oh my goodness, they're clearly viewing us not as a partner." And I think that education process, on the one hand, can be frustrating but also fun. The title of the agreement will often say joint development, but then you look at the terms and it's clearly a one-sided opportunity. So you have to take the time and invest the time to establish that you're partners in every sense of the word. That obviously includes the agreement framework. And then I think the last thing about partnerships is, and again, speaking for a small company of 20 people at Novomer, we got our head down every single day, and a lot of times people that are inside the walls will ponder is like, does anybody care about what I'm doing? It's a rather obvious question. It's like I come to work every single day. The CEO is telling me I should be making this polymer. It kind of sits on a shelf. Maybe it goes to a partner, maybe it doesn't. But ultimately, what's my motivation to continue to make inventions and developments? And what the partners do is it really inspires the organization. I always see our team kind of light up when you walk in. You have a multi-billion-dollar partner asking for a sample, and then providing results, and then ultimately they also want to talk to the team members about how they're doing, what they're doing, how they can make that product better. And ultimately, that's incredibly inspirational to the team and really motivating to keep people focused on the right things.
Well, that is, I've heard that from other CEOs, and it's good to hear also from you. I mean, there is a nice cultural impact to external relationships and motivation. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you also for all of your insights and your time today as we get to know Novomer better, and really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Paul. And so I hope this was useful to someone on either side. And it really takes a team to make these things happen and to stick with them even after the deal is signed.